So the one-legged squat is a beautiful blend of mobility, balance and strength, while the barbell back squat is a significant loaded axial movement which can significantly develop lower body strength and muscular size. KINOBODY, however, has stated that the one-legged squat is a better exercise than the barbell back squat. This is the sort of rhetoric that we need to remove from our thinking when we are programming our training. But first, my 10-year challenge. I know, this exercise is not really known as the one-legged squat. However, I cannot use the word beginning with P. I don't want this video to get flagged and reviewed and possibly taken down, etc. because the bots are listening, and yes, it is that strict now. So I'm going to refer to this exercise as the one-legged squat, or just this exercise with a picture. I do understand that sounds ridiculous. I am embarrassed. You are free to ridicule me for that. And so I've made videos comparing exercises before, but I'm going to state something very important. Different variations of exercises should be considered as different exercises within themselves. And this is for several reasons, including accurately tracking your progressive overload, as well as exercise execution, and I will explain those concepts later. However, these generic sweeping statements that exercise A is better than exercise B is not helpful for you. Now, of course, if you are training, you will assess your characteristics, your goals, your exercise experience, and you will choose exercises which at this moment in time are better for you. But when I see people like KINOBODY, who has a large influence on social media, giving these generic statements, it's just something we need to stamp out of online fitness. And I don't have anything against KINOBODY. I've never watched a full video of his. I'm not informed on his content as a whole. However, I was sent this post, and in isolation, this is extremely problematic. Dr. Andy Galpin says there is no such thing as good or bad exercises. It is all situationally dependent. However, there is one caveat. The best exercise for people with big feet is the Sasquat. And I shared some of Dr. Galpin's criteria for exercise selection in a previous video. I've linked that down below. So please go and have a watch of that to help you understand how you can choose your exercises to meet your goals. And so when you see KINOBODY's statement, to be clear, he's not saying that the back squat is a bad exercise. To be fair to him, he's not saying that. He's just saying that this exercise is better. And his rationale is that the back squat relies upon an ever-increasing load to be effective, and therefore when you get to heavy loads, the spinal compression, the risk of injury, the functionality of it is really problematic. And I'm going to explain why he's incorrect later about that. However, when you're thinking about the best exercise, you may say, well, James, doesn't it depend on your lifting experience, your history of injury, ergonomics such as your limb length, attachment points? Absolutely it does. And so you can see how there are many variables attached to exercise selection, and how we simply cannot state in a professional and informed manner that exercise A is better than exercise B. And so why should we consider different variations of exercises as different exercises within themselves? Well, many strength coaches and very good trainers will do this. For example, a conventional deadlift should be considered a different exercise to a hex bar deadlift or a sumo deadlift. A narrower grip or a wider grip on an exercise, or a narrower stance, a wider stance, an overhand versus underhand grip, we should classify these as different exercises. The first reason is for tracking progressive overload. A different grip or stance on a movement could mechanically make a movement easier for you, and therefore it may mess with your programming of your weight and progressive overload if you're tracking that over time and you're consistently changing your grip and your stance. However, more importantly, your execution is the vital component of your training. Sometimes we overanalyze exercise selection. Now, absolutely, you should be thoughtful and consciously choose effective exercises. Absolutely, I do that. My training is based on science, and I put a lot of thought into it. But don't suffer from this paralysis of analysis where you're constantly comparing exercises. Think about execution. Pick an effective exercise and execute it with consciously well-performed repetitions over time with progressive overload, and you will be successful. And so when we think of execution, the reason why it's so important to view variations of exercises as different exercises is because person A may say, well, when I perform this lift, I do it like this, but this guy over there, he's using the wrong form because he's doing it like that. Well, actually, no. Joey over there in the corner of the gym is using a wider stance. His deadlift is different to your deadlift, and therefore he may not be mechanically incorrect. The reason he may be using that form is due to the ergonomics, perhaps the length of his femurs, etc. There are so many reasons, and so it can be very, very confusing when we're looking at exercise technique and form, and we're just grouping deadlifts as all the same, or bench presses as all the same, or lat pull downs as all the same. And in addition, different variations of exercises, which are different exercise, can emphasize certain muscle groups more than others. For example, a wider grip on a lat pull down will activate more of the teres major than a narrower grip. And so I would really like you to look at your training and try to separate your exercises as different exercises. Be specific. I'm conventional deadlifting. I'm sumo deadlifting. I'm using a mixed grip. I'm using a double overhand grip. I'm using a narrower grip. I have a wider stance, etc. And I know that the sumo deadlift versus the conventional is a hot topic in online fitness. Let's throw another one at you. How about Gillette's latest advert? Comments below. But what I do like about KINOBODY's post is the fact that he's promoting a calisthenic exercise. The way that he's done it and the rationale is horrific, and I'll explain why. You don't have to consistently increase the load on these major compounds to progressively overload. There are many ways you can progressively overload. I've made a video on this. You can, for example, using the same weight, progressively overload by increasing the repetitions, slowing down the tempo of your lift, decreasing the rest times. Those are three methods instantly which will help to create a new stress on the muscle and overload the muscle. There is absolutely a point of diminishing returns when it comes to adding weight onto the bar. Beginner lifters, intermediate lifters, this is not really an issue for you. You can consistently increase the weight as your primary method of progressive overload. But more the upper end intermediate to advanced lifters, they will tell you that they can't just keep adding more and more weight. The weight would get ridiculous on the bar, especially for full range of motion lifts. And therefore they have to be more creative with their lifts and find more creative ways of progressively overloading. And so I find KINOBODY's rationale that you must consistently increase the load, and this is why it's problematic. It's just not a good way to set up this poor argument. In addition, spinal compression, yes, you're actually loading the body. There is spinal compression. But the real injury risk from back squatting, it is back squatting with an extreme load and or bad form. Absolutely, in that case, you should reconsider what you're doing. And so when it comes to fitness celebrities, please don't get tied down by any one fitness YouTuber. My advice, nibble at the rope and run. But the squat absolutely is a healthy goal to work towards. Now, it's not an entry-level exercise because it requires hip mobility as well as ankle dorsiflexion, as does the barbell back squat. Now, I'm currently barbell back squatting, high bar back squatting. My one-legged squat sucks. And so my issue is my ankle dorsiflexion. And so this is something that I'm going to consciously work on. I'm going to train ankle mobility and I'm going to develop that exercise. And over time, I will achieve good technique and range of motion for that exercise. Now, that's the correct way to look at this, not this is better than this. And of course, I support the idea of biomechanically sound exercises with good form, and also the idea of muscle balance or imbalances. If you are only performing major compound lifts, which are fantastic, you may suffer from muscle imbalances if you're not working on accessory exercises, even though the authority on strength training, Blahino, says that leg accessory exercises are not needed. Accessory leg exercises are fantastic for you. For example, Bulgarian squats. And so I do certainly like the idea of promoting these more one-legged movements in addition to the major compounds. Bashing on the traditional barbell exercises is redundant. They are great and effective for many people. And so we must not be so tribal with exercise selection. Absolutely, there are benefits and disadvantages to every lift, and we need to look at those and program accordingly, but we should not make these general sweeping accusations that certain exercises are better than others. That those types of posts, they sell, they're marketable, they get huge views, they get a lot of clout, but that's not the most useful for you. Please understand that concept, and also the concept that different variations of exercises should be classified as different exercises within themselves, because that will remove confusion with your technique, your form, your execution, and your progressive overload. I'm James Linker, Shredded Sports Science. I'll see you soon.